Welcome to the Health Services Committee meeting. First order of business is to approve last month's committee meeting minutes. Motion made by Supervisor Conover, seconded by Supervisor Frazier. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Okay. We are here today to discuss the change in ownership of members of the LLC. I would like to keep it solely for that purpose. We are not here to discuss anything other than that. My plan is to have Martin speak first, as in the board meeting a lot of questions were, or some questions were asked of Martin, and he was not available. So I would like to have Martin start off, and hopefully some of your questions may be answered. Then I will turn it over to the public, and then the supervisors, and then finally the committee. Please keep comments to 5 minutes because we've got a full group here, and I'm going to be up front. I do have to be out of here by 2 o'clock if we get to that point, but I do have to be out of here by then. So with that being said, Martin, I'll turn it over to you, please.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. The matter of the change of ownership of within the membership of the LLC, the percentage interests, it's really this, that the LLC, like any LLC, has member or membership interests. Our contracts to sell the facility and the land are with separate LLCs, limited liability companies. With respect to the asset purchase agreement is with Warren Operations Associates LLC, and I think for all practical purposes that's the agreement that is pertinent to this discussion. Mr. Rosenberg signed that agreement as the member or sole member, majority member of the LLC. He was not the sole member. Mr. Greenberg at that time was a 45% owner, Mr. Rosenberg 55% owner. They have decided, as is their right, their legal right to do so, to modify those ownership interests so that Mr. Greenberg becomes the 100% owner. As with any LLC, it is completely within their right, within their purview to do so. In my view, and special counsel that's helping us with this transaction agrees with me 100%, we do not have a legal standing to say who is a member, who is not a member, what those ownership interests are, and I think attorneys are involved, I know attorneys are involved in any number of transactions where by the time you go from contract to closing, the membership interests change. You usually don't know what those changes are. Here we know what they are. But this is not anything for us to consent to. It is not a requirement under the agreement that we consent to this. This is an internal matter for the LLC. It is not, in my view, a legal matter for the county. We have no legal standing to say who the memberships will be or what the membership interests will be. The vetting of the members for purposes of the CON, the Certificate of Need, financial wherewithal, etc., all of that takes place at the Department of Health level. It does not take place here. We have no legal standing to do so. There is no assignment of the contracts. Our contracts remain as is with the LLCs, as we negotiated, as we approved, as we executed. So there is absolutely no change in the contracts. The contracts are not being assigned. This is simply an internal business transaction of the members of the LLC, as is their right to do.
Thank you. Supervisor Westcott, did you have a question?
Could I ask the county attorney a question?
Are you asking for your 5 minutes now, or are you asking?
Well, I'm just asking, I have a question.
Go ahead.
Based on what the county attorney just said.
Okay.
Thank you, Mark, for clarifying that. I understood that as I read the contract, and you verified what I understood. My question has to do with the Articles of Organization for the LLC, which were filed originally by Centers, as stated that Kenneth Rosenberg will be exclusively the managing member of the company. How is our contract tied to those Articles of Organization that were originally filed, and is there a tie And how has it changed now from a legal perspective? Is our contract at all impacted by this change because of that move, or not?
The answer is that our contract is not at all tied in with their articles of incorporation. I'm going to read the signature page. Mr. Rosenberg is listed as the as the managing member, not the sole member. The managing member, LLCs have managing members, and they are typically the members who are in charge of the LLC. Managing members can change. Sole members can change. Ownership members can change. In my view, simply because the LLC Articles of Organization may have said that Mr. Rosenberg will be the managing member, that's consistent with our contract, but it doesn't have any impact on the enforceability of our contract.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I'll go to the public now. Mr. Whitehead?
Mr. Parpadu, I'm glad you said "in my view," because I want to read you exactly what is written in the Articles of Organization. Section 5, Management. The business and affairs of the company shall be exclusively managed by Kenneth Rosenberg, the managing member of the company, in parentheses, managing member. The managing member of the company must be a member of the company. It goes further on to say that neither the management structure nor this section, number 5, may be deleted, modified, or amended without the State of New York Department of Health approval. Would you comment on that, please?
Doesn't change my opinion whatsoever.
Doesn't change mine either.
I say exactly what I said. This is within the purview of the Department of Health. The question is, does this impact our contract with the LLC? And the answer is emphatically no, it does not. And I don't think you have set forth any argument to the contrary.
The LLC, it said here that Kenneth Rosenberg, spelled out, the managing member of the company, must be a member of the company. So, and that this cannot be deleted, modified, or amended in any way. So, you know, if he's not,
No,
if he's not taking himself out.
I disagree. I disagree. I think you stated it. Without the consent, if it says without the consent of the Department of Health,
It does.
and that's not our standing. We don't have legal standing to change that.
Have we seen the Department of Health rule on this particular item?
No, nor would we.
Would that impact, knowing that or not knowing that, would that impact the validity of what might happen tomorrow?
In my opinion, no.
Supervisor,
The
Mark, hold on for 2 seconds.
Just a question.
I just wanted to finish off with the public first. Anybody else from the public want to comment?
Okay.
Any of the other supervisors other than that are sitting on the committee? Supervisor Merlino, I believe you had your hand up first.
Yeah, number one, I'm not happy I'm here today. This is getting carried away. This is getting too far out of hand. We could have sold this nursing home back in February. $2.3 million in our town coffers. It's not there right now. It has cost us over $800,000, which nobody wants to say, but I'm saying it. Because we didn't sell it in February. All the stuff that everybody's fighting to save taxpayers' money and everything, we just cost them $800,000. If it doesn't get sold in the next couple of months, it could be another 6 months, but another $500,000 or $600,000. I don't know anything about nursing homes. But if the state health department is gonna give these people a certificate of occupancy for that nursing home, that's good enough for me. And I hope that I'm right. And I hope we don't have any trouble. But this is going on for too long, too many meetings, too many stalling tactics, everybody accusing everybody of something wrong, right, or indifferent. We're not doing the job for the taxpayers of Warren County. And I could have been at 2 separate meetings today where I had to be, but I canceled to be here. And I'm not happy about it. But I have to say my piece. This has got to come to an end today. And I think we should just move forward and sell this nursing home, get the agreement done, and we all gotta hope that it works out to what we think is gonna work out. That's it, that's all I have to say.
Supervisor Beatty?
Yeah, thanks. I don't know really where to begin, but I'll keep it brief. We all can agree that our elderly are our most vulnerable citizens. They really don't have a voice other than the Board of Supervisors. And if we don't look out for them, I don't know who's going to. This whole process started a while back. We were told Mr. Rosenberg was going to be the owner of Westmount. He came up here twice. He spoke in front of the board. He made statements like, I'm going to be the one accountable. I'm going to be the one responsible for these elderly. It's going to be me, my name, me. So this board votes, okay, some people are comfortable with that. I can appreciate difference of opinions. Then, last week, he files that he is no longer going to be a member, he's no longer going to be the owner and the managing partner of the LLC. He sells his part for, I believe, $10 to Mr. Greenberg. Now, I got a couple of questions. Lloyd, have you ever met Mr. Greenberg?
No.
Lloyd, no. So Lloyd's never met him. Do you know if he's ever even been to Westmount?
I don't know.
No, you don't. So, as much as we can say this or that in the Department of Health, ultimately, we're the ones responsible for those elderly, whether you like it or not. We are the final line, not the Department of Health, not anybody else. And there's a lot of people in this county that are uncomfortable with the track record of Mr. Rosenberg. But we went forward anyway. And then last Wednesday, he says, I'm out. I'm out. Now, our chairman says because he's got too much on the plate. Well, I'm not so sure how accurate that is. This is a very, what we call, button-down type of guy. He wants more and more. He knows what he's doing. He's not going to work all that hard and then at the last minute say, oh, by the way, I got too much on my plate today. I guess I don't want it. That makes absolutely no sense to anybody with common sense, and we all know that. So I guess, Martin, I've got a question for you. Do you know why he would pull out? Do you know if there's any violations or anything why he would pull out his application to be managing partner of the LLC?
My understanding, Supervisor, is that he is focusing on other but related matters, and I will tell you that there are always possibilities that there could be a violation. I'm not aware of the specifics of a violation. But if there is a violation, that could be the reason for a holdup of the matter. And I think you would have to ask that directly of him for the specifics, but that may be one of the reasons, yes.
So you're saying, let me try to interpret that there may be violations and that's maybe why he pulled out. Is that what you just said? I just want to get it clarified.
Well, there may be that may be a reason, yes. But I think that's a question that you would have to pose directly to them as to the specifics of the violation.
Okay, the specifics of the violation, I can understand, but there may be a violation. So, if I'm interpreting this, okay, he's all planned on buying this for all these months. He's made it very clear he's going to be the guy. He's, done the whole 9 yards. He's done his due diligence. And then at the last minute, 1 week before the meeting with the Department of Health, he says, or he then knows that probably he's not going to get it because there's some violations. And you just indicated that there are possibly some violations. You don't know the specifics of that. So he then sells his shares for $10 or whatever to this Mr. Greenberg, who Lloyd says he's never met, who as far as he knows never even been to Westmount. And so all this board, we were all on the assumption we were selling it to Mr. Rosenberg. That was at least my assumption. I don't know how we could assume anything else.
Well,
So now, I guess we're at the...
Again, I think that's the wrong assumption. Mr. Rosenberg is certainly here, has been here, I agree with that, but you are selling to an LLC.
Correct.
That LLC is still the legal entity that you are selling to. That is the transaction that the county has contracted for. You have no transaction with Mr. Rosenberg. You have a transaction
I understand
with an
that.
LLC.
I
I wanna
understand.
make sure, because
Yeah, I understand. Thank you,
I
Mark.
wanna make sure you're clear on that.
Yeah, I
There is
understand.
no transaction with Mr. Rosenberg.
I understand that. He'll be the managing partner of the LLC.
Point of order, 5 minutes.
Okay. Thank you, Dennis. Thank you.
No problem.
When did you start telling time, though? That's another, whole other subject.
about 5.
5 years ago. So, where we are now, though, is that this board was very clear that we're selling it to the LLC managed by Mr. Rosenberg. And that he was going to be hands-on, and basically he said all those things, and we can pull up the video if anybody wants to refresh their memories on what he said that day. But now, at the last minute, he's not gonna be this managing partner, and now Mr. Greenberg is, and no one's even met Mr. Greenberg, as far as I know. Dennis, have you met Mr. Greenberg?
I don't care if
No,
I
he
met him.
hasn't.
I don't
Okay.
care if I met him
So-
or not. You
so-
asked me a question, do you want an answer, or you just gonna
Have you,
talk?
yes or no?
Okay, Mr.
I don't
Beatty,
know.
we're gonna have to wrap this up. You're already at, 8
All right.
minutes.
So, I'm uncomfortable going forward with Mr. Greenberg, seeing that we've never even met him, we've never vetted him, and, that's where I am. Thanks, Mark.
Thank you. Supervisor Seaver?
Here, Dave Kramer taking bets on whether I was gonna say anything or not, but, he won. So, and I do my best to stay within my 5 minutes. I just have three points and 3 quick questions. You know, I received a call when this hit the paper, after our board meeting on Friday, from a woman whose father is in the nursing home, and was incredibly upset about what was taking place and what she was reading in the paper. And as I went to explain to her the way I understood it, I found myself a little frustrated with the way we proceeded. And I guess, I know, Martin, that you say it's a transaction, but I think it goes beyond being just a transaction. I mean, frankly, I know our residents are really nervous. I know their families are very nervous. And that vote several months ago was a very hard vote for me, and I spent an awful lot of time, Matt, with you and with our county administrator and county attorney and other people trying to fully understand the impact of our decision. And one of the deciding factors for me really was more than just a transaction. It was listening to the owner, to Mr. Rosenberg being here and speaking with us, and to his nurse that was here, who promised us we'd be more than just an entity that we would consult with. We wouldn't just be that nursing home that they were a consultant with, where all those violations had taken place. And when I read what they filed with DOH, the paperwork, it says that's exactly what we are, just an entity of which they're going to consult with. So the changeover from this owner is very significant to me, and it certainly makes me feel much differently about how I would have voted. I understand it's a financial strain, but I also think I know it's an LLC, but we are changing that owner. We're changing the person that stood in front of us and spoke to us about how he would ensure the way our residents were treated. And I guess, you know, as I was trying to explain to this family why I voted the way I did back then and how I feel now, I get we all have other places we could be. I canceled plans as well, but I couldn't be happier that I'm learning more so that I can explain it to the best of my ability. I don't think today is a waste of time. But I'd like to know, you know, Martin, you shared with me just a couple days ago that there was an $8,000 fine, a violation which was holding up this, and I'd like to know what the violation is for, and yet you said we could contact them directly and ask.
I don't know what the violation is for.
But how do we know even to ask if we don't know there's a violation?
I don't know what the violation is for. I don't know.
Right. I guess I'm really struggling with it. I understand, that everybody's frustrated and it's gone on for a long time, and I know I'm gonna finish under my 5 minutes, but publicly I felt the need that I need to explain why I voted the way I did before, and I appreciate all the time and effort that's gone into it, but I think it's a shame that we're now looking at, a last minute change, and it just seems a little, well, very last minute, but just not a lot of information being provided to us.
Well, let me say this. I can't say for certain I can't say for certain that the reason for the change in ownership is because of a violation. I cannot say that for certain.
Right.
I stick to what I said. It may be a factor, but I can't say for certain that that is the reason. I didn't speak to anybody at Centers about that. That's what I have heard, but I don't know anything more about that. So that may in fact be a factor. Mr. Greenberg is certainly affiliated with Centers for Specialty Care. So he is certainly a known quantity and quality to them. I would also note that with respect to Mr. Rosenberg, he could change his ownership interests at any time, either before the sale, after the sale, whatever, and we would have absolutely no say in that whatsoever.
So at any time, we could have turned over to being that agency that was just a consulting.
Correct.
Because I remember him saying, I can't be responsible for that violation, I'm just a consultant. And, you know, when we were talking about some of the case examples, but my last question, in my 30 seconds that are left, is, they weren't under any obligation to tell us that they were changing ownership. I mean, they come to our county, they spend all this time at the meeting talking with us about how we should believe in him as an owner and his agency of how he'll take care of our elderly, and yet you told me the other day that they didn't notify us, you know, DOH notified us.
No, I did not state that.
Oh, I thought I asked you
no,
if we were
they-
notified
no,
by
no.
Centers of the change.
We were.
DOH.
We were, I did not state that, Rachel. We
Okay.
were notified, and I believe it was either Tuesday or Wednesday of last week. We were not notified by the Department of Health. We were notified
Directly by
by Centers. They had no, in my view, they had no legal obligation to tell us about that. But they came forward and they told us about that. And I think the reason why they told us about that is because of the respect and high regard that they have for Warren County. They had no obligation to do so, yet they felt that it was the right thing to do, so they did so.
I guess I just wish we were notified a little earlier so this discussion could have taken place before the day of the sale. But, thank you, I appreciate the explanation.
Any other supervisors other than the committee? Supervisor Brock?
Not to get into it, but has anyone here met Mr. Greenberg and what was their impression of him? I mean, somebody must have, did you meet him?
Did he come to the initial, I mean, this is going back 3.5 years now. I personally cannot recollect whether or not he did or not.
I don't know.
So we don't know.
I don't remember if I met him. I can't say that he's my best friend. But, no, I can't. Supervisor Taylor?
In response to that, I seem to remember that he was one of the people that came up during the original interviews.
There was a group of 4 or 5 that came, I think, in the very, very initial meeting.
Any record of that?
Matt, is there any meeting notes from that?
No, that wasn't enough. That wasn't,
Verified?
I don't think, no, that was like one of the initial things. Okay, I'll turn it over to the committee. Supervisor Westcott.
Go back to Martin, I'm just trying to get some legal clarification, Martin, I'm not making any judgment calls on what you said, I'm just trying to get some legal clarification. Picking up on the articles, isn't the document that Centers filed to assign ownership from Mr. Rosenberg to Mr. Greenberg, is that where the instrument is to change the member, the managing member? Is that it? And that's what, I guess, will be in part reviewed tomorrow and decided on? It's that document that was filed with their application.
The Articles of Organization?
And they assigned Mr. Rosenberg on September 15th, assigned his membership or management status to Mr. Greenberg. So, trying to understand, our contract is the LLC. It's not tied directly to our Articles of Corporation or Organization, but it's that assignment on September 15th is the instrument to change it. I'm just trying to understand it. Everything was done legally, and, you know, so we feel confident that the agreement is a solid agreement.
Everything being done, I can't speak from the Department of Health perspective whether everything is done legally, but I can speak from our perspective that everything has been done legally here. What the Department of Health reviews, what their standard of review is, what the scope of their review is, I can't speak to that. I don't know.
That'll be something that you'll, I guess, discuss tomorrow, I mean, to make sure everything's...
Well, I don't know that it's for us to discuss tomorrow. I think it's a matter for the DOH to address at some level, whether they've already addressed it or will address it tomorrow, I don't know.
Second question is, when, on February 20th, when Mr. Eisenberg was here as representing, Mr. Rosenberg and Centers, these are in the meeting notes, he pointed out that the state of New York, there's no such thing as a corporation owning a nursing home, and that they need to be owned by individuals. How does that, so is the attorney that's on the contract with us the representative of the individual that owns the nursing home? Because, you know, at that time, Mr. Rosenberg's name was not mentioned in the contract. So I'm just trying to understand what Mr. Eisenberg was getting at. When the contract doesn't mention the individual, that's with the DOH filing. The DOH filing has to be the individual that owns it, and the LLC contract is just the instrument of that ownership. I'm trying to understand the legalities.
The LLC contract is an asset purchase agreement. The LLC is purchasing the asset which we know as the nursing home, the facility, the right to operate a nursing home, and all that goes with it. That is being purchased, the 80 beds, whatever, that is being purchased by the LLC. At the end of the day, Mr. Eisenberg is correct that an individual has to be the actual owner, has to be on the hook, if you will, for the ownership of the facility. But that is a matter between the individual and the Department of Health.
Now that person will be Mr. Greenberg. I just have one comment and then I'll take it off, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to address what Mr. Molino said. I called for this meeting. I called for it because the meeting with the DOH is tomorrow, and a lot of us just heard for the first time about this ownership change. The chairman was gracious enough to agree to the meeting and get it set up. Thank you very much, Mr. Sokol. It's just an opportunity for all of us to get caught up and get the information. It was never intended to be a stalling tactic. The meeting with DOH is going on tomorrow. I have every expectation, I was talking to Lloyd, that this sale will go through tomorrow. But before it does, I felt this body owed it to the citizens of this community to get an update and hear what's going on. And what I'm hearing is that the gentleman that will now be the owner and the name on this facility and the person responsible, nobody here has really met him except for possibly he came 3.5 years ago, that first meeting. So whether that matters to you or not is your decision. It does matter to me. I think that's something that is bothersome. I certainly would like to meet this man, and I know it's Yom Kippur, it's the most holy of holidays, and I understand why he couldn't be here today, and I wish him and his family blessings, but I would certainly like to meet this individual and find out who's going to be the owner of our nursing home. That's just my own personal opinion. Thank you.
Anybody else from the committee? Supervisor McDevitt?
Yeah, I'd also like to maybe echo Mark's comments that I think it's important that tomorrow, I assume, Mr. Greenberg will testify in New York City. They feel it's important that they meet individually and personally and vet Mr. Greenberg. Since we are the seller of Westmount, it would seem that we also would want to vet and get some explanation from Mr. Greenberg as to who he is. It's my understanding that New York State nursing homes are not permitted to be owned by corporations such as Centers. They are owned by individuals that can demonstrate that they have the financial means, character, and competence to assume those responsibilities. The New York State Attorney General has held these owners personally responsible, so it is important that they have the resources that they claim they have, and they have the economic wherewithal to support the Westmount facility. We have not had an opportunity to talk to Mr. Greenberg, and as a seller, to ascertain, and I would think any normal seller under these circumstances would want to determine and ascertain whether Mr. Greenberg has the resources to support this facility, since he's the one that's going to be responsible. He's the one that is personally liable for this facility. So, is it unreasonable to ask that we ask for some delay to enable Mr. Greenberg to come before us so that we have an opportunity to ask him some questions? I think that is as normal and sensible as can be. Just as an aside, on the New York State applications are wonderful from the perspective that they tell you exactly what the buyer is going to do. They tell you how he's going to pay for it. They tell you how they're going to get the money. There's a character and competence consideration in this application. The fact that Mr. Greenberg is not here today would be testament to his character. Looking at the application in the state of New York application, I would have some concerns relative to his economic competence. For the life of me, I would ask Mr. Greenberg, how is it possible that the Westmount facility on a ground lease will pay Mr. Hagler, Mr. Darrell Hagler, Darrell and Darrell, $550,000 a year? That's what I would ask him. They're going to provide, they're going to bring $1.5 million to the table, $1.5 million of those $2.3 million. In return for that, they're going to get $550,000 per year. In less than 3 years, Darrell and Darrell will have gotten their entire investment back. Economic competence, I kind of question that. The numbers just don't make sense from that perspective. Great for an investor, but Mr. Greenberg, who should be viewed individually, I would just pose that question. So and then one last issue, the two homes that Mr. Greenberg are involved with are in Corning and Steuben. In Corning, the latest state of New York evaluation of this facility was shocking. They had 30 deficiencies at this facility when the state average is 5.3. Westmount's last evaluation had 2 deficiencies, where the state average is 5.3. So, basically, my bottom line is, I'd like Mr. Greenberg to come forth and give us an opportunity to talk to him. Thank you.
All I'd like to say is that LLC had not come forward to tell us that they were changing ownerships. We wouldn't be having this discussion today, would we? And they could have done it that way and just moved forward. They felt it was the right thing to do to let us know, but then all of a sudden we sit here and pick apart why it's wrong. We don't know the man. I just think it's time that we move forward. I just don't think we need any more delays on this. We have been at this for like 3.5 years, and I think it's just time to move forward.
Thank you. Supervisor Conover, did you want to add anything? No, you're okay.
Like the majority, I've already cast my vote. And we have no contractual, the attorney already spoke to the issue, so I have nothing more to add.
Supervisor Molino?
Just one more quick comment. I understand Mr. Westcott's heartfelt circumstances, but I'm sitting here thinking, why didn't we ask when the gentleman was gonna be a 45% owner of this facility back in February. Because they could have planned it, he could have owned it by now today and we would have sold 10. Now everybody, you're looking for things to keep, why didn't we, he's a 45% owner of this facility if we would have signed it in February. And maybe in April, May, June, or July, he would have bought the whole facility out. So, you know, to me it is, it's time, I understand your heartfelt, and I understand 80 patients there, but, there is a whole county. My people and myself can't afford any more taxes in Warren County. $800,000 that we've already spent over this is a big difference in our budget coming up this year. Which we're all complaining we're not doing enough roads, or we're not doing enough of this, enough of that. Now we have to maybe put up another $500,000. To me, that's important too. It's important to have citizens healthy, but is a whole county that we have to worry about. Thank you.
Okay. Yes, Supervisor Method.
It's been said before at this meeting, if we were dealing with automobiles or clothing or commodities that people sell on a day-to-day basis, I would totally agree with my friend Supervisor Merlino. We're dealing with vulnerable human beings, and that's why these issues are important. We're dealing with human beings that are in the twilight of their existence, and so the way I look at this, we can afford to delay. This should not be about money and the almighty dollar. This is about Grandma and Grandpa and Uncle Tom and Aunt Susie festering in a nursing home that by this application, there will be a reduction in staff and benefits of 27%. What happens when that occurs? It goes very quickly to the aides that take care of your most loved ones. So I don't know why we're so honed in on money here. We're dealing with human beings.
Okay, thank you. Yes, Mr. Westcott.
Just one quick response. I didn't know about Greenberg's 45% back in February. Didn't know about it. First time I heard his name was on Friday. So he wasn't in the meeting in February. I reread those notes. I looked at the meeting on March 16th. It was never brought up. The only thing Kenny said was he would be the majority owner. That's all he said. He didn't put a percentage on it. So Greenberg's name first materialized last Friday. So I just wanted to clarify that.
Okay. I appreciate everyone coming. I think we're all set.
I need to make a motion.
You need to make a motion.
I think you have a comment over here.
I just wanna, I'm assuming tomorrow the thing will be passed. Is there any way Mr. Greenberg could come up afterwards so as to sort of, I'm sure there are people at West Mount and families and everybody that's gonna be upset or, you know, cause this will make major. Is there any way you could come up and just, so we can move forward in a positive, you know,
Paul is saying yes and he'd like to comment on it.
Yeah, knowing the folks at Centers, and that's who we're really talking about here, because he's part of Centers. Knowing the folks at Centers, I'm sure, I mean, obviously I can't make promise that he'll be here, but I cannot believe that he won't come up. Because their assurances have been every step of the way that they want to do this right. They are concerned about our residents at that nursing home. They want to do things right there. So I have no doubt in my mind that he would come up. Here again, I mean, I got to call him, but I will be happy to do that.
You understand my purpose is to
Sure.
allay people's fears.
Sure.
It's a good idea. It's a good idea.
Just like to make a motion, just.
Go ahead. Oh, I'm sorry.
I didn't see an action item on the agenda. Is motion something that you're looking for a vote on today?
Yeah.
So, I don't know, is that required?
This is just general information. We're not here to make votes. It was simply discussion. And that's where I'd like to leave it. Okay. Can I get a motion to adjourn? Supervisor Frazier, second Supervisor Conover. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you.
I don't think you gave me my 5 minutes either.